You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Quote, "Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Period." Close quote. That is the complete text of the Equal Rights Amendment. It has a clause in there about the Congress should have the power to enforce it, and it has a clause saying this amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. Ha! You wouldn't think it had taken over 50 years, still counting, to get women into the Constitution. That is what we're going to explore today. Not only what happened the first time around in 1923 when the great Alice Paul, feminist, lawyer, and activist, tried to get it through, or back then it was called the Lucretia Mott Amendment, or in 1943 when she tried again, or in the 70s when we tried again. And it's going to come back at us one more time. "Once more with feeling," Robin said, growling. So, we're going to examine what happened all those times before, and what we face now, and what is really at stake. My special guest for the program is Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney, who has been a champion for women and women's rights and the Equal Rights Amendment for years. So, let's get started, and first let's go, inside the headlines. In 1923, on the 75th anniversary of the 1848 Women's Rights Convention in Seneca Falls, Alice Paul introduced the first version of the Equal Rights Amendment, then called the Lucretia Mott Amendment. It stated, quote, "Men and women shall have equal rights throughout the United States and every place subject to its jurisdiction." Period, close quote. Pretty simple. The National Women's Party and professional women like Amelia Earhart, the great pilot, of course supported the amendment. But other reformers, particularly those in the labor movement, who had worked hard for protective labor laws for women, were terrified that the ERA would wipe out their progress. This could have been solved simply by mobilizing for the extension of protective labor laws to men, like not lifting items over a certain weight or doing especially hazardous labor. But it became a huge sticking point for those who exploited class divisions within the women's movement, thus protectionists. By the early 1940s, both the Democratic and Republican parties had added support of the amendment as a plank in their political platforms, although opposition was building. Social conservatives, who considered equal rights for women a threat to the existing power structure, joined with labor and with leftists fighting for protectionist workplace laws to hinder the amendment. Eleanor Roosevelt agreed with them, and the ERA stalled. Nevertheless, in 1943, after 2 world wars, and with women pouring into the labor force, or already there, the amendment was reintroduced. This time it was called the Alice Paul Amendment, and to reflect language in the 15th and 19th Amendments, the new version stated, quote, "Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex." Period, close quote. Again, pretty clear, pretty simple. Still, the left and the right remained fairly united in opposition. By the 1960s, young women who had been active in the civil rights movement and the anti-Vietnam War movement, I was one, began politically to examine our own lives, and shake off the dust of what we called the male left. They began to organize as citizens, and politicians started to react to the power of women's voices in new ways. Mainstream groups joined the call for the ERA, and this time they began to include organized labor. Phew, you say. Yes, it was passed by the Senate and the House, and on March 22, 1972, the proposed 27th Amendment to the Constitution was sent to the states to be ratified. But Congress placed a 7-year deadline on the ratification process, as it has sometimes had done with other amendments. Well, the ERA hit the ground running and got 22 of the necessary 38 state ratifications in the very first year. But as opposition began to coalesce, the pace slowed. All through the 1970s, ERA opponents like Phyllis Schlafly, right-wing leader of the Eagle Forum's Stop ERA movement, played on the fears that had generated opposition way back in women's suffrage days. She and her followers claimed that the amendment would deny a woman's right to be supported by her husband either in marriage or in terms of alimony, that women would be sent into combat, that contraception use and abortion rights would be required, that same-sex marriages would be upheld, that unisex bathrooms would be mandated, and that the ERA would destroy the family. States' rights advocates said the amendment was a federal plot, and businesses, particularly the insurance industry, strongly opposed the measure, which they believed would cost them money. And, not surprisingly, the ERA was vociferously opposed by most evangelical and/or fundamentalist religious groups. Alice Paul died in 1977 at a nursing home in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Like Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Susan B. Anthony before her, she never saw the Constitution transformed to include the rights for women she had worked for all her life. But meanwhile, the National Organization for Women, NOW, and ERA America, a coalition of almost 80 mainstream organizations, kept on keeping on and mobilized skillfully. And that same year, Indiana became the 35th state to ratify the amendment. Phew, again, phew. Oops. Wait. As the 1970s drew to a close, Illinois changed its rules, under pressure from insurance companies, to require a 3/5 majority to ratify an amendment, thereby ensuring that their previous simple majority votes in favor of the ERA hadn't ever counted at all. Isn't that convenient? Other states proposed or passed rescission bills, despite legal precedent that states lack the power to retract a ratification. All the while, the original 1979 deadline was approaching, and although some groups, like the League of Women's Voters, wanted to retain the 11th hour pressure as a political strategy, most ERA advocates appealed to Congress for an indefinite extension of the time limit, and NOW coordinated a successful march of 100,000 supporters in Washington, D.C. Congress granted an extension until June 30th, 1982. Is that a tentative phew, I hear? Nope. The political tide would turn much more conservative, and in 1980, the year Ronald Reagan was elected president, the Republican Party removed their support for the ERA from its platform. But Phyllis Schlafly never got the cabinet post she'd been promised by Reagan as a reward. Distinguished Republican feminists walked out of the convention the night they took that plank out of the platform, and Betty Ford denounced the action. But the die felt cast. Despite increases in massive pro-ERA lobbying, petitioning, walkathons, hunger strikes, fundraisers, White House picketing, and civil disobedience, on June 30th, 1982, the ERA fell 3 states short of the necessary 38 for full ratification. It was a significant defeat. But you can't keep a good woman down. On July 14th, 1982, 2 weeks later, the Equal Rights Amendment was reintroduced in Congress, and it has been reintroduced before every session of Congress since then, with several strategies operative to achieve full ratification. In March of 2017, Nevada became the 36th state, the first state since 1977 and 35 years after the original deadline, to ratify the amendment. This surge in support was quickly followed by Illinois, and then in 2020, Virginia made history to become the 38th state to ratify. Now attention is focused on removing the deadline. There are also, after the fact, ongoing efforts in several states, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida, to ratify the amendment. Now, everyone claims they want to ratify because, after all, who could be against equality? Well, except the opposition, because the deal still is not yet done. Now look, we ourselves were partly to blame for the past, in that we didn't fully understand how state legislatures work. We being the public, not just women. We didn't get how redistricting works. Wow, were we naive. Also, we failed to impress sufficiently on Americans the concrete changes for bettering women's and men's lives, men's too, that the ERA would bring. Even today, some people say, what's the point? Don't women have equality? Why is an ERA necessary? This time around, when it came back, I was one of those people for a full 15 minutes. I'm indebted to Jessica Neuwirth for her excellent book, Equal Means Equal, Why the Time for an Equal Rights Amendment is Now, for the clarity and concision of the following examples. Why an ERA? Well, without effective constitutional protection from the 14th Amendment for many forms of sex discrimination, and in the absence of an ERA, targeted federal legislation has been used to try to close the gaps, so we women have had to squeak through relying on the Commerce Clause, the Equal Pay Act of 1963, Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 64, Title IX of the Education Amendment of 72, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act of 78, and the Violence Against Women Act of 1994. While this has significantly helped women, these federal laws are neither comprehensive nor fully inclusive, and one has been partially struck down by the Supreme Court for lack of a constitutional foundation. Most critically, none of these laws has the force of a constitutional amendment, which means they do not cover everyone, and they can be rolled back at any time by a simple congressional vote. Poof! There goes every form of misogynistic attitude and act against women let loose upon us, from domestic violence through pregnancy discrimination to equal pay and education. Nor would we now be having to fight a arch-conservative Supreme Court for our basic rights to abortion under the Constitution and to medical help for health. Oh, that's terrifying. Moreover, the United States is one of only 7 countries in the world, along with Iran, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, and 2 tiny Pacific Island nations, Palau and Tonga, that have not ratified the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, otherwise shorthanded as CEDAW, CEDAW. It's the International Bill of Rights for Women, and it has been signed and ratified by 187 countries, virtually every nation in the world except the United States. It was signed by President Jimmy Carter in 1980, but it has to be ratified by a 2/3 vote of the Senate to enter into force, yet apparently the United States can't, or won't, ratify it because the ERA has not passed. Circular non-logic. In this poisonous partisan era, democracy itself is at stake in our republic. What better way to prove that it's alive and well for all of its citizens, not just those who are male, than to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. We've got to take a brief break here, but we'll be back in just a moment with my special guest, Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney. Wonder Woman for women. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
First elected to Congress in 1992, Carolyn B. Maloney is a recognized progressive national leader with extensive accomplishments on financial services, national security, the economy, and especially a champion for women. She's currently chairwoman of the House Committee on Oversight, which is quite powerful, and Reform, and former chair of the Joint Economic Committee, the first woman to hold both of these positions. Her career has been a series of firsts. First woman to represent New York's 12th Congressional District, first woman to represent New York's 7th Councilmanic District, where she was the first to give birth while in office, first woman to chair the Joint Economic Committee, a House and Senate panel, landmark legislation, including permanent authorization of the September 11th Victim Compensation Fund, the Credit Card Holders' Bill of Rights, and as chair of the Committee on Oversight and Reform, she has led the fight to protect the 2020 census from the Trump administration's political attacks and to assure that the Postal Service was able to operate at its full capacity. She's also a senior member of the House Financial Services Committee and the Joint Economic Committee. In the House Democratic Caucus, she has served as regional whip and vice chair of the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. She's been such a champion for domestic and international women's voices and women's activism. She's authored and helped pass legislation that targets sex trafficking, including the first bill that focused on the demand side of human trafficking to punish perpetrators. She's the co-chair of the Congressional Caucus on Human Trafficking, and she passed legislation that provides annual mammograms for women on Medicare. Her legislation to create women's health programs and offices in 5 federal agencies was part of the landmark health care reform, the Affordable Care Act. And on top of all this, she's attained a first-degree black belt in Taekwondo. That was in 2007. She's fabulous, and here, to my delight, back with us again, this time to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment, is Representative Carolyn B. Maloney. Congresswoman Maloney, dear Carolyn, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for inviting me, Robin, and thank you for really covering women's issues and consistently over the years.
Well, that's what we do. I mean, I don't even say women's issues anymore. I know exactly what you mean, but still, what issues are not women's issues?
You're right. Every issue is a woman's issue.
Yeah, name me an issue.
Covering women's voices. Maybe
that's it. You got it. Absolutely. Yeah, on target. But yeah. And today we're going to talk about the Equal Rights Amendment. This is a once more with feeling go around, as well as a number of other things, because you're involved in so many things, Carolyn. You are a champion for women in the Congress. You really
Thank
are.
you. Thank you.
You've earned it. So let's start at the get-go. For the young ones who never heard about the ERA or who vaguely heard it was something that their mothers or grandmothers were concerned with, Alice Paul was concerned with it. That's a grandmother. That would be a great-grandmother now. Let's start there and why we're having to do this yet again to get us in the Constitution.
Well, as you outlined, we passed it in the 70s. Alice Paul introduced it in 1923 in Seneca Falls, New York, and it passed in the legislature in 1972. You needed 38 states to ratify it. We got 35 very quickly, and then it stalled. And then when Mr. Trump came with the women's movement, the Me Too movement, the Time's Up movement, all of this emphasis and the efforts of myself and other like-minded men and women across the country, we finally got the last 3 states to ratify the amendment. In very recent years, Virginia was the last one in 1920, Nevada in 2017, Illinois in 2018, and Virginia in 2020. So now the ERA has finally met the 38-state threshold for adoption into the Constitution. It's the 28th Amendment to the Constitution, plain and simple. Each state that has ratified the ERA in the 21st century has done so with strong bipartisan support, with Republicans and Democrats alike co-sponsoring the legislation and leading the fight for ratification. For the ERA to officially be added to the Constitution, it must be certified and published by the National Archivist. Unfortunately, the National Archivist saw himself not as doing his constitutional duty, but he wrote the Justice Department under Trump and asked them what they should do, what he should do. And unfortunately, the Trump administration issued an erroneous legal opinion in January 2020 that blocked the completion of this certification process. And that is why last month, as chair of the Oversight Committee, I held a hearing on the status of the ERA. Yep. At this hearing, the committee released an analysis from preeminent constitutional and legal scholars affiliated with Columbia University. These scholars concluded that the Trump administration's legal opinion should be withdrawn because it relied on flawed interpretations of legal precedent and directly contradicted past opinions. Mm-hmm. So coming out of that hearing, I sent a letter to President Biden and Vice President Harris urging their administration to rescind this erroneous memo. I also sent a letter to the National Archivist David Ferriero urging him to certify and publish the ERA without delay. In addition, on October 30th, the Senate confirmed Christopher Schroeder as Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice Office of Legal Counsel. Schroeder, too, has the power to rescind this memo and must do so immediately. And even though we know that the ERA can be added to the Constitution today, in case there is any doubt that all 38 ratifications are valid, the Senate must follow the House and immediately pass the bill to eliminate the timeline for ratification that was included in the preamble to the ERA back when it passed in 1972. We have already passed the bill to rescind it. The Senate should do the same, but it wasn't part of the Constitution, nor is it part of the constitutional amendment. So I contend that we don't even have to do that, but just to make it absolutely clear. Mm-hmm. But that's where we stand right now. It will make a big difference to women's lives. Why would they fight it so much all these years?
Yeah, well, that's a rhetorical question. Well, a couple of things, Carolyn. I mean, first of all, the National Archivist, Trump's boy. Who is his boss? Isn't it Biden? Or rather, the Justice Department? He goes to the Justice Department, and then the Justice Department. If Biden were to say, "Listen, this was illegal and incorrect. Why are we following in Trump's lead?" Just do what you have to do. I mean, and why can't the National Archivist ratify those states and ratify the extension of time?
Well, he can. That's what we're pushing him to do. He can do that. You're absolutely right. And we are hoping that Merrick Garland, and also Schroeder, Christopher Schroeder, the Assistant Attorney General for the Department of Justice, will also rescind this memo. And we have reached out. We've reached out to him directly, and also to Merrick Garland. The Women's Caucus has sent a letter over asking for a meeting with Merrick Garland to rescind it. As you know, October 30th, literally the Senate just confirmed Christopher Schroeder. Yeah. So that just happened. So when I get back to Washington, I'll certainly reach out for him for a meeting and send a letter over requesting a meeting with him also.
How can we help you, Carolyn? Can we write to Merrick Garland and write to Christopher Schroeder?
Yeah, you could write to both Christopher Schroeder and Merrick Garland and the President of the United States and ask them to rescind this memo and issue another one from the President Biden, on his interpretation that the 38 states have ratified it, and they have.
They have.
It should be in the Constitution. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think many people either don't remember it at all from the 70s, or they do remember it, but they don't know quite what it was. Of course, it's a simple sentence, but that would include women actually in the Constitution. They don't even think that women aren't included in the Constitution, and yet, you know, the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment has been interpreted to protect against discrimination on the basis of sex. But that understanding of that amendment isn't assured or guaranteed. And laws like Title IX, the great sports and education law, and the Equal Pay Act are not permanent protections for women, and they can be rescinded, people don't know this, at any time or replaced. Isn't that so?
That's what we're confronting now. We're confronting that almost every day in Congress. And the ERA is basically the legal foundation that can withstand the changing political whims of legislators, judges, or occupants of the White House. Our equal rights shouldn't be dependent on who's president or who's the majority in the Supreme Court.
No, we shouldn't be a political football either.
Exactly, and we are. I spend a lot of my time in Congress holding on to the rights that we already won in Title VII, Title IX, all of the big rights for equality in employment, equality in sports, equality in education.
Right.
And the ERA is the only way to make lasting progress on the goals we consistently fight for, one issue at a time, like equal pay. Equal pay is not enforceable unless women are in the Constitution, unless we ratify the Equal Rights Amendment. It's that simple. Yeah. When you have these pay equality cases go to the court, they don't win. And as we know, Scalia famously said that women aren't in the Constitution and they're not protected from discrimination.
That's right.
Couldn't be clear. We have to pass the ERA to really protect women from discrimination. Otherwise, the protection's not there. And equal protection under the law against any form of sex discrimination needs to be enshrined in the Constitution, and we will never have equal pay for equal work unless the ERA passes, and is therefore equal pay for equal work can be enforced in the courts. And it's that simple.
Say some of the other ways in which it would affect legislation, because, I mean, whether it's violence against women, you've said education, you've said equal pay. There are so many cases where, like you say, you're having continually to defend what supposedly we have already won, that we wouldn't have to because we would be able to cite this. And once it entered precedent, there it would be. So give us some other examples.
I think equality has no time limit, and we cannot wait for it another moment.
Yeah.
And for the last 4 generations, feminists like myself have been marching, lobbying, attempting to win lawsuits, defeating anti-ERA legislators. Enough is enough.
We're tired, and we're getting tired and cranky.
Right. And by enshrining gender equality in the Constitution, we give ourselves the legal bedrock to finally achieve justice for women in the workplace, in the courts, and beyond. And we have long fought for equal pay for equal work, dating back to before the Equal Pay Act of 1963 and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. But without equal rights built in the Constitution, we can finally enforce permanent pay equity and other key protections for women and girls.
And that really does raise all boats, yeah.
Yeah, it does. And another example is violence against women.
Yeah.
Rape is so rampant, but if you go to court, it's thrown out all the time. For example, in 1994, and this was a Biden bill, and I worked with him on this bill. It was the Violence Against Women Act.
Right.
And it included within the Violence Against Women Act, which for the first time treated it seriously. It used to be, that's a personal item. No, it's violence. It's a crime.
Of course.
And it included the right to sue one's attacker in the Violence Against Women Act. But when a woman named Christy Bronkyla, who went to VMI and was gang raped in front of a lot of people, so there was not any any question of he said, she said. People saw it. One of them confessed, yes, I did it. She went to the school. They did nothing. She went to the city council. They did nothing. The state legislature. They did nothing. She goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And they dismissed her case and deemed the provision unconstitutional on a technicality, that the ability to put a private remedy in the law is outside of Congress's powers under the Commerce Clause. But let me tell you, rape is not a technicality. Equality is not a technicality.
No.
And again, I say there was no question. The guy admitted, yes, I did it in front of all these people.
Amazing.
And yet it was thrown out. So we don't have that protection. I believe rape would go down tremendously if we could get the Equal Rights Amendment, and women could sue for their rights to protect themselves and to go after their rapists
So
and hold
you'd
them
have
accountable.
You'd have civil as well as criminal cases. That would be
Civil as well as her case was civil, and it was really thrown out on a technicality.
Oh, God.
And women are never fully protected, and we as legislators need a new place in the Constitution to ground our laws and protect women in it. I'll give you another example that's outrageous. I worked on a bill with the great Patricia Schroeder. She was a great leader. I don't know if you knew her.
Of course, I did know her, and I will never forget. She was silver-tongued. She was the one who said, you can't wring your hands and roll up your sleeves at the same time. Oh, she was great. Go on.
She's still great, but she passed a law on female genital mutilation, which is a form of law in some of the religions and countries of the world. And she passed a bill that outlawed female genital mutilation. It's brutality. It's really cutting and removing parts of the woman's body, and it's just wrong. So a bill was passed that was challenged in Michigan, and they won. They overturned it. Can you believe that?
Amazing.
So that's another example. So and this was recently, about 3 years ago, they overturned it.
My God.
We have since passed another bill that hasn't gotten through the Senate to make it, to again try to outlaw it in our country. So that's another situation, and particularly in the area of Title IX, equality of treatment in sports.
That's a huge one.
They keep trying to roll it back. First they went and tried to pass legislation rolling it back. They tried to pass a constitutional amendment rolling it back. They never were able to do it. They finally rolled it back with an executive order. And the executive order said when you go to a school that they can have a survey only for women, not men. Do they want sports? And if the women don't fill out the survey, then they can cut back women's sports.
My God.
We finally overturned that, but they're constantly going at it in different ways to roll back the rights and opportunities for women. So what is so it's to me very simple. Equality of rights under the Constitution shall not be denied or abridged by any state on account of sex.
Yeah, it's really simple.
Simple 23 words, I would think. And what's interesting, every country in the nation, or rather the world, I should say, has an Equal Rights Amendment, save the United States.
It's embarrassing. So it's so mortifying.
It's embarrassing, and it's so right, and so, it's just...
it's the nose on our face.
It's unbelievable we're still fighting this. 85% of UN member state countries have a gender provision in their constitution.
Oh, my God.
And we need to ratify, and we never ratified the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against women.
I know.
And we are the only industrialized democracy that has not ratified it. I have a bill in to ratify CEDAW.
Oh, bless your
CEDAW
heart,
requires
Carolyn.
a gender provision in the Constitution so that ratifying the ERA will pave the way to ratifying CEDAW.
Sure, but they claim that, well, you don't have CEDAW because you don't have the ERA, and then they turn around and say, well, you don't have the ERA because you don't have CEDAW. It's a complete, cluster muck, of circular non-logic. You know what stopped us up last time in the 70s was, of course, Ironically, it wasn't even Phyllis Schlafly, although she was pretty unfortunate, but it was the insurance companies in a kind of cigar-filled smoke room in Illinois. They made a deal to can the last states that would have ratified and go over the deadline. That's back when there was a deadline, of course. So people need to write to Merrick Garland at the Department of Justice, to the president himself, and to who was the new man who just got confirmed?
Oh, that's Schroeder. That's
Okay.
the new guy who just got Schroeder confirmed as the deputy.
And this is under his particular purvey. And say, we want this, we want the ratification, we want it now. Because Carolyn Maloney is right. And let me take just another second or two of your time. Congratulate you over the actual recent passage of the infrastructure bill. Ask you what is going to happen with the women's half, what I consist in calling the women's half of the infrastructure bill, the human half. And also, are you not being primaried? And should people not be getting out there and voting for Carolyn Maloney in the 12th district?
Yeah, I am being primaried by the so-called Justice Democrats.
Oh dear!
But I'm doing my job and getting everything done as much as I can for people.
Oh my God, you certainly are. You have so much legislation as well as a black belt in Taekwondo. So you are not messing around, kiddo.
So, and I would just say that people who oppose the ERA oppose equality. Everybody says they're for equality. It's like waking up in the morning and having a cup of coffee. So we should get that passed. But we did pass very, very strongly, and I congratulate the Democratic leadership and the president and really like-minded Republicans who voted for the bill, because we did have around 8 Republicans who voted with us.
Right.
And it puts $1.2 trillion into our infrastructure. We've been trying to get a major infrastructure bill for years. It's going to mean moving the 2nd Avenue subway up to 125th Street, completing that's one of my projects, and another one of my projects is the East Side Access, bringing in the overcrowded LIRR into Grand Central, and of course the connection we call it Gateway, but the connection to New Jersey that needs to be repaired and brought it up to date from the 9/11 disaster that we had.
Yeah.
So it's really a very, very important bill. But the second half of the bill, which we have an agreement to pass, has paid family and medical leave, which is incredibly important. In my lifetime, I was almost fired because I was having a child, and I went to personnel. I said, "What's the policy?" Said, "We don't have any. You just leave." I said, "I don't want to leave." And honestly, Robin, they said, "Well, you'll be the first one. It's never happened before."
Of course, I'm not
surprised. I said I had to pay someone to come in and do my job while I was out on maternity leave, because there was no leave, nothing. You just were supposed to leave your job and not come back. The first bills I voted on was unpaid family and medical leave that allowed women not to be fired for having a child. And then this past year, year before last, I passed a bill in the Government Oversight Committee that I chair that has jurisdiction over federal employees. We passed paid leave for the birth of a child. It was a big deal for over 2 million employees. And in this bill that we have now, we did have 12 weeks of paid leave. It's now been shaved down to 1 week, but at least it's in there,
right? And
you can build on it and make it stronger and better. We have terrible laws for work-family balance in the United States.
Speaking of work-family balance, I have to ask you one last question. I simply must. This is very serious, Representative Maloney. Carolyn, given the bills you've passed, given the way you rouse people in leadership in Congress, given children into the bargain, when do you ever sleep? Do you? Or should I say, do you ever sleep?
I do, but not enough.
Because
there's really
honey.
no job is exciting or as rewarding as public life. If it's done honestly and fairly, you can have a great impact on so many lives of people you'll never see or know personally, but you'll know that you increase their protections, you increase their rights, You made them stronger and better and healthier, and by passing these bills that we're passing now with the Build Back Better bill and the infrastructure bill, it's a major investment into the American family and American worker.
Well,
And
on behalf
really
of American women, I want to thank you for all you do and continue to do all the time, much of which goes unheeded or unknown, or it just passes into the, oh yeah, we got that now. And it's amazing. So I give you all my love and my support. We're going to definitely write to Merrick Garland and to Mr. Schroeder at the Justice Department. We're going to write to the president. We're going to tell him to move the ERA, and we're going to turn out for that primary to be sure that Carolyn Maloney continues as the representative from the 12th District. Bless you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you for all you've done and for shining a light on all these important issues and speaking out for saying what needs to be said. Thank you.
It's time for another quick break, but I'll return directly with some fighting words. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Once more with feeling. Those can be fighting words. You can't say women are lazy, or pushovers, or unstubborn, for that matter. So we've had a glimpse into what getting women into the Constitution after more than 200 years, that is, passage of the Equal Rights Amendment, will do, and it's breathtaking. It will enshrine in the Constitution the value judgment that sex discrimination is wrong. It will require the federal government and each state to review and revise all laws and official practices to eliminate discrimination based on sex. It will ensure that governments do not enact future laws that discriminate on the basis of sex. It will be the basis for recognition of the principle that the homemaker's role in marriage has economic value and that marriage is a full partnership. It will ensure that non-monetary contributions to a marriage, such as household work and child care, must be considered when a couple's household goods are divided as a result of divorce. It will ensure equality of opportunity in public schools, state colleges and universities, employment training programs for federal, state, or local governments, and in governmental recreation programs. It will ensure equal opportunity, privileges, and benefits in all aspects of government employment. It will ensure that families of women workers receive the same benefits as families of male workers under the Social Security law, government pension plans, and workers' compensation laws. It will ensure that married women can engage in business freely and dispose of separate or community property on the same basis as married men. It will give the same rights to a woman as to a man in marital law, and allow for a married woman to maintain a separate domicile for voting purposes, for passports, for car registration, etc. And so forth and so on. Now, about what it will not do. Well, fortunately, or unfortunately, it will not destroy the family. Neither will it mandate contraceptive use or insist on abortions for women who don't want to have them. Public opinion already charged way ahead of Phyllis Schlafly because women are already in combat, performing with valor. Public opinion also left poor Phyllis at the starting line, regarding and approving same-sex marriage. And the world didn't end. It will not require co-ed bathrooms. Although, frankly, when flying 35,000 feet in the air, people willingly use unisex bathrooms anyway. And, just as frankly, I would wager that if you ask the average American woman if she would enjoy being discriminated against while pregnant, or in case she might become pregnant, if she liked being battered by a domestically violent partner, and if she was content to sacrifice equal education, never even to aspire to equal pay, and would guffaw at the notion of equal sports access, she would get pretty damned cranky. Even a great many American men might share that reaction. As for being told that the United States ranked at the bottom with Iran, Somalia, Sudan, South Sudan, Palau, and tiny Tonga, sharing the humiliated status of not ratifying an international Bill of Rights for the majority of its citizens, again, I would wager that every red-blooded American, is blood any other color, for God's sake, would start to fume with outrage. I know, we're tired. The last thing we need is a new cause. But, you see, this is an old cause, an unfinished cause. I know that we're exhausted from COVID and lockdown and climate change crises and years of Trump and the dreadful aftertaste he leaves in our mouths that still have to swallow some of his big lie Republican Party poison. We just want to curl up, squeeze our eyes tightly shut, maybe suck on our thumbs and listen to a nice fairy tale. Well, your sunbeam sister here can tell you that the fairy tale will come when all women in this country live free, empowered, and protected by our Constitution, because this is one fairy tale we can make come true. We can do this. So pick up or order a copy of Jessica Neuwirth's excellent, thorough, and easily accessible book, Equal Meets Equal: Why the Time for an Equal Rights Amendment is Now, for further information, so you can brandish it during Thanksgiving dinner arguments with those members of the family which has not yet been destroyed. Then drop an email or give a call to your senator. And yes, I know the problem with the Senate, but still, they're currently focused elsewhere, so this will take them by surprise and weigh in as one of what I hope will be many, many voices saying, "Now, Buster. Now, madam. Now." Here's the thing. If we don't do it this time, you and I both know we'll just have to roll up our sleeves and do it all over again, which will really be a drag. Hell is repetition without movement. This is a chance to strike a great blow for democracy in general, and at the same time, specifically for women. So do it for Alice Paul and Susan B. Anthony and the great Elizabeth Cady Stanton. Do it for all those nameless hunger strikers and civilly disobedient girls and women who acted on their outrage. Do it for your daughters and granddaughters, and your sons and grandsons, too. But most of all, do it for yourselves. Yeah, put yourself in the Constitution of the Republic of the United States of America. Those are my fighting words. Add yours on Twitter, and remember to tag us at WMC Live and use the hashtag #FightingWords. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and now Instagram at @TheRobinMorgan, and you can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and find my latest book of poems, Dark Matter, and my brand new novel, Parallax, wherever books are sold. Opinions expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the Women's Media Center. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer of this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us again next time on Women's Media Center Live.